Ancient scribes, sacred scrolls, hidden in desert caves, discovered by Bedouin shepherds nearly 2,000 years later. Who wrote them? Why were they hidden? And what vital message do they have for us today?
In the 1st century AD, about 70 years after the birth of Christ, members of a mysterious religious sect hid a collection of over 900 sacred scrolls in caves in the Judean desert bordering the Dead Sea. The chance discovery of the ancient scrolls 2,000 years later by Bedouin shepherds was considered one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of all time and sent shockwaves through the world of Bible scholarship. Who wrote them? Why were they hidden? And why are they so important to us today? Join me as we travel to Qumran in search of answers. Buried treasure, hordes of it. Yes, I know where there is enough hidden wealth to boggle the imagination. There are boxes of precious incense and vast quantities of gold and silver. All told, 200 tons of the stuff worth over $1 billion, lying 5 to 6 meters under the ground, all buried in the desert by a strange religious sect. To get the breathtaking details, I've come to the Middle East to visit one of the most inhospitable places in all the world, but one that has captured the imagination of people everywhere and popularized the science of archaeology. To get there, we've got to leave the sacred city of Jerusalem and travel east through the Judean desert. Here, the mountainous landscape plummets dramatically 1,200 meters to the blistering hot basin of the Dead Sea. On the way, we pass the sea level sign. However, we still haven't reached the sea. Although the plaque says sea level, we still have to keep going down and down. We're on our way to the lowest place on Earth. The Dead Sea is 400 meters or 1,312 feet below sea level. It's the lowest place on planet Earth's land surface. So we've still got a long way to go. The Dead Sea is 50 kilometers long and 15 kilometers wide and reaches a depth of 400 meters. It covers an area of 605 square kilometers. Virtually all of its water comes from the Jordan River, which flows into it from the north. The Dead Sea has no outlet. In Hebrew, it's called the Sea of Salt. It's the world's saltiest body of water, 10 times more salty than seawater. In fact, nearly a third of it consists of dissolved salt and other minerals. Its supersaline waters makes floating easy. It's so salty you can't sink. You can float in the Dead Sea and read a book without fear of sinking. The Dead Sea has attracted visitors for thousands of years. It was one of the world's first health resorts for Herod the Great, and it has been a supplier of a wide variety of products, from asphalt for Egyptian mummification to potash and fertilizers. People also use the salt and minerals from the Dead Sea to create cosmetics and herbal sachets. It rarely rains here, and summer temperatures often reach 45 degrees Celsius. It's a harsh and inhospitable environment. Near the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea, in a wilderness of terrible beauty, is a hillside that is honeycombed with caves. This is the site of one of the most exciting discoveries of all time. Many archaeologists are convinced that the treasure found in this area is more valuable than all the gold and wealth found in the ancient tombs of kings and pharaohs. The discovery here happened by accident. One day in 1947, a Bedouin boy called Muhammad the Wolf was minding some goats near these cliffs along the shores of the Dead Sea. Now, these goats are very agile and are able to climb incredible heights in search of the tender green tufts of grass that grow in springtime among the pebbles and sand of this desert region. One of the shaggy goats that Muhammad the Wolf was minding chanced to stray from the rest of the flock. While searching for this aggravating animal, he noticed a small cave in the rocky cliffs that he hadn't noticed before. Thinking that his goat may have taken shelter in the cave from the blistering summer heat, Muhammad picked up a stone and threw it into the cave. But the sound that came back to him was not the familiar echo of stone striking stone. He was startled to hear the strange echoing sound of shattering pottery. Panic-stricken, he rushed away in fear of evil spirits. But was it an evil spirit, or was it gold? Now, Muhammad the Wolf belonged to a group of smugglers from the Tamara tribe who were trying to get their livestock and other goods out of Jordan and into Palestine. They were on their way to Bethlehem to sell their goods on the black market. They detoured far south to the northern shores of the Dead Sea to avoid crossing the Jordan Bridge, which customs officers guarded with guns. And they'd set up camp at Ain Fashka, the desert oasis near the ancient ruins of Qumran. These nomadic Arab people inhabit the vast desert regions of the Middle East and have a culture of herding camels and goats. These animals comprise their livelihood and are used for meat, dairy products and wool. The Bedouin travel from place to place looking for water and grazing for their animals. Because they have to be mobile, they carry all their worldly possessions with them as they travel. They live in large tents that they pitch when they find a suitable location. The tents are made by hand of goat and sheep hair and provide ideal shelter in the desert. Its loosely woven material lets air come in and the smoke out, so the tent is pleasant in summer. However, on rare occasions when it rains, the fibre gets swollen and the tent becomes waterproof. So these grand desert tents are ideal for the Bedouins' nomadic lifestyle and function well in all conditions. That night, as Muhammad the Wolf sat in the family tent, he told his cousin of his experience. The boys were intrigued by possibilities of what the cave may contain. What was in there? What secrets lay hidden in its dark interior? The next morning found the boys on the mountainside at the cave. Dreaming of a trove of hidden treasure, the boys squeezed through the narrow opening and dropped into the cave. To their amazement, they discovered that there was a collection of large, dust-covered pottery jars standing on the floor of the cave. Eagerly, the boys removed the lids. Imagine their disappointment when they discovered that the jars contained only rolls of old leather covered with strange writing, all carefully wrapped in cloth and blackened by age. They had hoped to find a hoard of treasure of gold and silver, but instead they found brittle old scrolls that were not much use for anything. They were deeply disappointed. But actually, they had found treasure, even though they didn't know it. They had found the treasures now known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. On that legendary day, not realizing their value or significance, the disappointed Bedouin boys stuffed the 3 scrolls into their shirts and took them back to camp, hoping they might get a bit of money for them in Bethlehem. During the next couple of weeks, the boys discovered 4 more scrolls in the cave and a couple of unbroken scroll jars. Over the next few months, the scrolls hung from the tent poles in the Bedouin camp. Eventually, the Bedouin took the scrolls and 2 jars to a shopkeeper and cobbler friend in Bethlehem by the name of Kando. At first, no one was interested in the dirty old scrolls. An employee of the Department of Antiquities called them worthless. Kando decided to buy 4 of the ancient scrolls. He felt that if nothing else, they may have some use as leather for shoe repairs. The remaining 3 scrolls were sold to an antiquities dealer named Salahi. Kando then resold the 4 scrolls he had to Archbishop Samuel, head of the Syrian Orthodox monastery of St. Mark's in Jerusalem. The journey of the scrolls then becomes stranger than fiction, truly amazing. A Hebrew University professor, Eliezer Sukenik, heard about the scrolls and set out to investigate the significance of the discoveries. It was extremely dangerous. Arab-Jewish tensions were high as the modern state of Israel was emerging. But Sukenik was prepared to risk everything for the scrolls. He travelled to meet an Armenian antiquities dealer at the British divided military zone on the Jerusalem border. In this clandestine meeting, the dealer held up a fragment of leather for the Jewish professor to examine. As Sukenik peered through the barbed wire, he immediately recognized the ancient Hebrew writing. Eager to see more, Sukenik traveled with the dealer to Arab Bethlehem to see Salahi, who had the first 3 scrolls. He was amazed to see the Hebrew scrolls and agreed to purchase 3 of them. It was the first time the scrolls had been read for 2,000 years. As tensions in the Middle East burst into war, the Archbishop smuggled the remaining 4 scrolls from Jerusalem to America. And there he advertised them in a Wall Street Journal classifieds ad. In a strange twist of fate, Yigal Yadin, Professor Sukenik's son and an Israeli war hero, bought all 4 of the scrolls through a front man. The first 7 original scrolls were united again in Israel. Well, when news that the scrolls were very valuable reached the Bedouin and their friends, hundreds of treasure hunters rushed to the area near the Dead Sea. They searched every conceivable crevice, rock formation and hillside cave and re-explored the area. Their efforts were rewarded when they found a cave that contained a most unusual scroll. They discovered 3 strips of finely beaten copper that had been inscribed and rolled up into a scroll. As the archaeologists searched the caves and found more fragments, they realized that these scrolls had been part of a large library. But who wrote them? And why did they hide them in the desert? Well, the answer lay 100 meters from Cave 4, where they found the largest cache of scroll fragments, here in some old ruins that had been on maps for decades. These Qumran ruins were mistakenly assumed to be the remains of an old Roman fort. Now, archaeologists began excavations which revealed that the ruins had been a monastery of a Jewish sect, the Essenes, around the time of Christ. The excavations revealed a lot about the community that lived here. There was a large kitchen and dining room which contained thousands of plates and bowls. Clearly, a large number of people ate together here. They had large cisterns for containing water. The region is very dry, and in order to obtain water, the people made a canal to draw rainwater from the hills behind. The cisterns are big enough to supply the needs of hundreds of people. There are storage rooms where they kept their produce and supplies. They had workshops for potters and laundrymen. A large watchtower ensured they had ample warning of approaching danger. Nearly every phase of the life of these remarkable people has been pieced together by the scholars who unearthed this self-sufficient community. But why did these people choose to live in such an uncomfortable, isolated place? The nearby cliffs are rugged and bare. The plateau is flat, dry and barren. The sun beats down mercilessly in summer and makes the rocks so hot it's impossible to stand still on one spot for more than a few seconds. There are no trees to give shade. It's bleak, dusty, hot and unpleasant. Yet these people built quite an elaborate settlement here. Why? Why would anyone want to live here? Well, the answer lies right here. This room was the nerve center of the Essene community. They came to this inhospitable region to live in seclusion and spent their lives copying out the Bible. This room is the scriptorium, or writing room. Originally, it was a two-storied building that housed a library and a writing area. Here the Essenes worked, carefully copying out the scriptures, commentaries, and other works. Their whole lives revolved around this work. They had copies of the Hebrews, or the Old Testament part of the Bible, and they spent their time carefully copying it out. Archaeologists made an amazing discovery here. In this very room, where the copying of the scriptures was done, they found desks, inkwells and quills the Essenes used. More inkwells were found here than at any other site from this period. The inkwells still had dried ink in them. And here's what's truly amazing. When they analysed the ink in these inkwells and compared it to the ink on some of the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were found to be identical. They also found pottery jars that are identical to those found in the caves which contain the Dead Sea Scrolls. But in June of AD 68, death came to Qumran, and all writing here ended forever. That was the time of the first Jewish revolt against Rome. On their way to attack Jerusalem, the Roman legions destroyed the Essene settlement at Qumran. Those residents that did escape just had enough time to hide the sacred scrolls they couldn't carry in these cliffside caves before they fled the Romans. They hoped that when the Romans had gone, the scrolls could be rescued. However, they didn't live to return. Some of the scrolls were lost in landslides or through dampness. But many survived and lay undisturbed in the desert caves for almost 2,000 years to become the greatest manuscript discovery in history. As the experts pieced together and deciphered the scrolls, they discovered some very interesting things. For example, the copper scroll was an inventory of 61 hoards of treasure, gold, silver, incense and the like. This treasure, according to the scroll, had been hidden in a number of secret places near the Dead Sea in Jerusalem. It hasn't been found yet, so if you'd like to join the treasure hunt, you can. There's nearly 200 tons of treasure worth over $1 billion, buried 5 to 6 is accurate, just as the prophets originally wrote it.